Do you love writing DBT models, but sometimes forget the right test? That was definitely me whenever I used to be a data engineer and just wrote all those DBT models that I thought were great, and then of course I start running in production and they start falling apart a little bit. And if I would have wrote good tests, I would have caught those things before they ever got started. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in Ultimate Code and allow Ultimate Code to take a look at our test, tell us what we're missing, and then build those tests out for us. So let's dive into the terminal and see what we can do here. So in our Ultimate Code IDE here, I'm gonna ask it a question of saying like, can you take a look at my DBT test? And I'm gonna switch this over into plan. You can see that there's a few different variants here, or a few different agents, excuse me. So I'm gonna start off with the plan one just because I want to make a plan before I start building this thing out. I'm gonna click enter. And this thing is going to go ahead and start taking a look at our test there. It's going to take a little bit of time to go through all those tests. I have like a fully functioning DBT model built out here. So with a bunch of different models, I should have said a DBT project, excuse me. So with a bunch of different models and so on and so forth there. So it's going to take a little while. While it does that, let's talk through some of these major features of Ultimate Code. So over here on the right side of our screen, what I really, really love about Ultimate Code is it's open source, and you can bring whatever platform you want to bring. So whether that's Anthropic, whether that's OpenAI, whether that's Gemini, you can add whatever you want to add in here, and you can use those models. I'm currently using, as you can see down here in the bottom, I'm currently using Claude Sonnet 4.6 from Anthropic, but we don't care which model you use. We even have some free ones for you to use as well, some open source LLMs that you can use just to get started if you don't want to actually spend any money while you're playing around with this. So definitely check that out. And what's really cool about it is since it's open source, like we're not trying to push you to use more credits. We're giving you good visibility into everything that you're spending over here. So you can see there's nothing currently. Once this gets done running, we'll have some tokens and some money spent up there. But that's just giving you good visibility to know that, hey, like, I'm using AI wisely, and you're not just going to get a bill from Anthropic, Google, or OpenAI at the end of the month and say, oh my gosh, I spent this many tokens. We're going to tell you how many tokens you're using so that you can say, hey, like, whenever I built these DBTs test out, it's going to spend some amount of money, and then you get to decide for your organization, is that worth the spends? We think using Ultimate Code is going to be worth it for you and worth that spend, but we give you the option for it. We just want to give you visibility, and that's our goal here at Ultimate AI, is just to make sure you have visibility across your full data stack, and that's just one way we have it inside of Ultimate Code. So we'll let Ultimate Code finish up looking at the test, and we'll jump back in whenever it's done. All right, so we can see now that it's done looking at all the tests, so we can take a look and see what the recommendations are and what it saw. So it says we have 24 tests across 4 types, so generic built-in, custom generic, singular, SQL, and DBT unit test. And it says here's what's well covered. So this dimension listings cleanse has 7 tests, shows us all those. Continuing down the page here. So I'm not going to spend all the time reading all those. You can definitely see them there, but then we can see that we have some coverage gaps. And that's more important for what we're doing in this video, is that we want to see those coverage gaps. We want to fix them. So in the coverage gaps, you can see we like intermediate host performance table. There's no test at all. Mart listing performance, no schema column level test. Mart full moon reviews, no column level test, unit test only, so on and so forth there, right? So we've got to fix that. We need tests, especially in those intermediate and Mart tables. Like those are what's going to go to production. We need tests on those. And then also has some notable observations there. So we have redundant test, informal test model, missing review date, not null on function reviews, and then function reviews, reviewer name needs a uniqueness or needs a unique test there. So it's the primary key. So it should have a unique test, right? So anyway, so it says, would you like to suggest a plan to improve test coverage, or is there a specific area that you want to focus on? So I'm going to say, suggest a plan. Okay, so now it's going to build out a plan for us and say, hey, like we think that we should build out these things, right? So it's taking a look at that. We'll let it do its planning, and we'll dive back in whenever it has a plan for us. All right, so it created a test improvement plan. So let's walk through this. So the first one says convert test mart listing performance.sql from a model to a real test. And so you can, so in our DBT project, we actually have the SQL model that's like operating as a test. So it's saying, hey, let's actually change this into an actual test and for a DBT test, which is what DBT is made for, is to create these good tests. And so you can see that we have a unique for listing ID, not null, accepted values, not null as well. So that works there. So this will be added to the schema.yaml as a new Mart listing performance block. That sounds good. Second, add tests for intermediate host performance. So it says currently has 0 tests. It's going to do these columns and do unique, not null. Accepted values, so on and so forth. And listen, the accepted values test is spectacular. It's one of my favorite features of DBT, but I hate writing the test out. Maybe I'm a bit lazy, but I'm really glad that's going to handle that for us. Add missing test to fact reviews, add test to full moon reviews, add source test to raw.host, remove the redundant singular test, and then add a unit test for mart listing performance price segment logic. That will work there. So there's the priority, and I'm going to say, want me to proceed implementing all this, and I'm going to say, I'm going to switch it over to Builder, and I'm say, yes, proceed with implementing these. Okay, so now it's going to go through and actually build these things out. And you can see, like, it says the effort for all these things are low, trivial low, which, I mean, honestly, it's pretty fair, right? I mean, writing DBT's test is pretty easy, but that doesn't mean it always happens, right? Like, these things slip through the cracks, just like writing documentation, which we'll cover in another video coming up very, very soon as well. But yeah, so it's giving me all these permissions, so I'm going to allow all these things for it to take a look at everything. And so you can see, like, it's checking the actual column names are in the model before writing in the YAML. So it's getting column names, so on and so forth there. So it says, I can read the SQL models directly to understand the columns. Let me implement with the implementation. Have all the information I need from earlier exploration. And so you can see that it has a full to-do list here, right? So it's going through here and writing this out. So step one is adding. It's working too fast for me. Step one is add mart listing performance and mart full moon reviews test to a new mart schema.yaml. Okay, so we're going to have model mart schema, and there's our models with the model name, columns, and then there's those tests coming in, right? So we have the unique, not null, not null, not null. There's the accepted values with the arguments there. So budget, mid-range, premium, luxury. This is a DBT project that's looking at Airbnb reviews, so that makes a lot of sense for what we're doing there. We have only listing above portfolio average and below portfolio average, so that's for information about the lister, so on and so forth there. So a lot of good information. So that's in the schema. The tests are going to be good to go for that. Okay, step two says create a fact schema.yaml with fact reviews test. And so you can see there's that fact review description column with the test in it. So on and so forth here on step number 3. So create intermediate schema.yaml with intermediate host performance test. So it's looking good here with all of our tables, columns, with all of our tests in there. So again, not going to go through all of this, but and not only that, but it said, hey, the YAML parser is tripping on an escape single quotes in the description. Let me fix that. So might have messed up some quote stuff in in my descriptions of my YAML, which happens to the best of us, right? But Altimate Code also goes through and fixes those issues as it's going through and adding new things as well, which is really great. So did that in step 3, so we're good to go. Step 4 says add the source test. So you can see it did that here. Step 5 says write the singular test for the price segment logic. And so you can see that it did that as well. Step 6 is adding a unit test. And so you can see there's a unit test there, and you can see, like, there's a lot going on, right? I mean, this is a lot of lines of code that it's saving you from having to write, but you can see it has all of these different price segments written out and all these things that we've tested out throughout our code, or that we've written out through our code that it's just making sure works. Step 7 says delete the redundant test and the test smart listing performance model, and then now it's running the full project build. Which, again, this is another really cool thing about Altimate Code that's different than other LLMs that you can use in your data engineering, is not only does it do the work, but it's actually going to run it and make sure that it works and, like, test it out as well. Because if it writes, if an LLM writes you tests, but they don't work, then did it really do anything, right? It's the whole tree in the forest falling situation, right? So it is testing it for us as well. And you can see, like, hey, there's a duplicate. Factory views is already defined in this other schema. So it's removing that old one because I actually had a schema YAML at the model level, or at the full project level versus the model level. So it figured that out and it's fixing that. Okay, and so you can see down here at the bottom that's the build's getting a credentials error, so it can't fully build out. So because of that, we need to let it know that, hey, we are using the DBT environment set up in the virtual environment in the Airbnb folder. Okay, so I'm gonna give it a bit more context and say, hey, we're using this UV environment, so it's gonna go find that UV environment, and that's where all of our credentials are stored. And so it's gonna be able to run this and actually build it out and see and know that these tests actually worked. And of course, as it's running down here, we can actually see that, like, hey, there's these new files that were created, the schema.yaml and mart intermediate as well, and then this test. There's files modified, so the schema files as well, telling us that, hey, it added these, so on and so forth, and then there's the 2 files that it deleted. And again, another thing that sometimes gets me on LLMs, hopefully it doesn't get y'all, but definitely gets me, is that sometimes LLMs work, and like edit files, delete files, and don't really tell you. It just kind of happens, and then you go look at your files later on, and it's like, oh, I didn't know that actually was a thing that happened. So we always give you visibility with that as well inside of Ultimate Code. All right, so you can see after it got the UV environment, you can see like, hey, the build is running. There's one real data failure to address the source not null Airbnb host names. So it says 15 rows in this raw.host have a null name. And like looking at the data, like this is real data, not a test bug. So the right thing is to degrade or downgrade this from an error to a warn, excuse me, so that it services as an alert rather than breaking the build, since we can't change the source data. And that's a good catch as well, right? So sometimes you write test out and you're like, hey, like the names for all these hosts should all appear, right? They should all have names. However, as we all know in real world data, that doesn't always happen, right? Sometimes we don't have all those names. And sometimes that's okay, right? Sometimes you're okay not having all the names. And so what this is telling us now is like, hey, I'm going to change this to a warn just so like, hey, the user knows that there's some of these people that don't have names, so that the test or that the full project can continue running and it doesn't just shut it down. But just so you always are aware, so that like maybe at some point you can go back and update those that the data set with those names, or if they don't have names, you can always just take care of that as well, and maybe like go in there and put some some like fake names in there or something like that if you need to. So anyway, so it says, so it ran, so it build that and downstream, so on and so forth there. And so it says all the new tests pass. Now understand the full picture. So it says that source not null Airbnb host names generally have null names, which is the thing that happens. Dim host cleanse is skipping in the full build, so that's because of an upstream ephemeral model, ephemeral source being skipped. So it's just in a selective build above that shows that's fine. It's it builds fine in isolation. So that's just a quirk. And the existing expect call max to be between warning on price is configuring as a warn, which is correct. And so it is fixing that one URL issue, which is downgrading that raw.host.name test to a warning. And so you can see it changed it from not null with a config severity warn. And then now it's running this full DBT build one last time just to make sure everything is running as we expect it to. And again, this is another really cool thing about Ultimate Code, is that just like whenever we're building out our DBT models and our tests and so on and so forth there, it's going to run into some weird things happening, right? It's going to run into like, hey, I thought the names should all be there, they're not. Or there's something going on with an upstream ephemeral source going on, right? Like all these things happen whenever we're building our things out. They're going to happen with your agent as well. And that's why it's really great that Ultimate Code understands data engineering and understands how to build DBT models well, and will understand how to fix these things and get around them. So we'll let this final DBT build run, and then we'll pop back in and see the results. All right, so this thing fully ran. You can see that 66 things passed, 2 warns, no errors, no skips. So those 2 warnings that we mentioned before definitely popped up like we wanted them to. And so you can see here that like we can even expand this and show off everything that happened here. Obviously, there's like 70 things being run or tested here. We're not going to show all of that in this video, or else you'd fall asleep. But it is there, and then you can see here's those warnings. So 15 results on the not null host names, and then 1 result here in this other one that I had built out to happen just for these models on purpose. And so yeah, you can see this is all done. There's this in a table format for you as well. The 2 warnings, the 1 fix made during the run, and then the test count went from 24 to 53. And again, just kind of going full circle in this video, you can see up here in the top right hand corner that we used 87,000 tokens for a total of $1.51. And that's using Claude Sonnet 4.6, which is the newest model that they have. And I think that's really great, because we added basically 30 tests to our DBT model without having to write any of them manually in around 20 or 25 minutes or so. Obviously, this video was fast forwarded a bit to cut out some of the load time, but around 20 minutes of real time, $1.50 to add 30 tests. That's efficient, and these are really good tests that are going to continue to allow your DBT models to run in production, and you're not going to have any weird things happen whenever you're presenting your Power BI dashboards or running machine learning models, right? So yeah, in this video we showed off how Ultimate Code can look at a DBT project and look at what tests are missing and add those tests for you.